Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is April the 20th, 2020, the 26th of Nisan 5780. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world as we deal with the pandemic called COVID-19, Corona. Hope you are safe, hope you are okay, and hope you had a lovely Passover wherever you are in the world for those who celebrate in light of the new realities which we are facing. Here in Israel, tonight we begin the commemoration, Holocaust, Martyrs, and Heroes Remembrance Day here in Israel and really all over the world. So we're going to go right to the phone right now and speak to an award-winning British-Israeli journalist. He is a Holocaust survivor, a decorated World War II veteran. He's 96 years old. He is the oldest radio broadcaster, actually, in the world. This according to the Guinness Book. He has a show called the Walter Bingham File on Israel News Talk Radio. It's truly an honor to have a hero on the program today, the one and only Walter Bingham. Welcome to the show, Walter.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
First, I'd just like to know, how are you doing in this age of Corona? I understand you live in Jerusalem, correct?
That is correct, in the center of town.
How are you managing here in this new reality?
Well, fortunately, I have a daughter who doesn't live too far away from me. I live by myself, of course, and she is looking after me very well and brings the food if I need it, and they go to the supermarket and bring me food and leave it by the door now. Don't come inside. But I'm managing it. It's boring at times, as it is for most older people. I'm fortunate. You already mentioned that I do radio shows. I do the one that you mentioned, and I have one on the Israel National Radio, which is Avut Sheva in English. And I'm also heard in Australia. So it keeps me busy during the week putting together a show. As you know, it's not easy, and I used to go outside and report from different events in the country. Now I can't do that, so I'll do the best I can. But it keeps me busy. So that's one blessing, where so many other people, especially the older people, and of course Holocaust survivors, at this particular time are especially melancholy and think of their families. But thank God I'm okay.
That's great to hear that you're doing well. In light of this new reality, keep at it, keep busy. You're a true inspiration, a national treasure, as being the oldest radio host in the world. But I want to get to the fact that here we are on the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day. You yourself, a survivor. Tell us the significance of the day to you as we head into the commemoration this evening. And also, if you can, share just briefly, I know we could talk for hours about your life's work and your story of survival as well. Just your thoughts as we head towards Holocaust Remembrance Day, and just give a little background, if you can, on how you survived the Shoah.
It's a very poignant day for me personally, having lost many members of my family. But I also, as you indicated, I lived through the period of Nazi tyranny, not fortunately in the camps, but I am classed as a survivor, because if you lived anywhere under the Nazis at the time of the Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, then you are classed as a survivor, because that was the beginning of the Holocaust, the biggest pogrom other than the actual Holocaust in the camps itself. So I was born in Germany, and I went to school for 3 years before Hitler came to power. And then Hitler came to power and things changed, of course. I lived under Hitler for 6 years, and it became successively tougher. We had a very tough time, but people were hoping it would get better, but it didn't. So in school I suffered, because as a Jewish boy, first of all, I had to sit in the back of the class, and if the children hit me, And I went to the teacher. The teacher didn't do anything, so it got worse. It was a vicious circle. And subsequently was thrown out of school. And it was very tough. We boys, I was a teenager, young teenager, we made our own fun. Let me give you an example how we had to entertain ourselves. And this is before I come to the Yom HaShoah. We might sit in a tram where you had to be in a special place, and some Nazi might sneeze. And in Labriut, in German is Gesundheit, as you know. So we would, with half Yiddish and half local dialect, say, Gesundheit. And the man would say, thank you very much, in German. And what we actually said was not Gesundheit, health. We used to say Zumteut, to death. This is just one item. When in the tram, the conductor would call out the station, and the old market square was renamed to Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler Platz. And Platz, of course, as you might know from Yiddish, means to burst, as well as a square. When he shouted Adolf Hitler Platz, we would say, oh man.
I gotcha.
So that was how we had to entertain ourselves. Life was very, 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 very tough. We all suffered quietly, but I am really thinking about the people who were in the camps. I don't think I would have survived one day. I can't imagine myself one day under the circumstances in the camps. However much we suffered, it's no comparison. And today, the elderly, the survivors, many of them who don't have any more the mental capacity to know what's going on with this virus. Why are they locked up? They were locked up once before, and now again they're locked up. Can you imagine? It must be terrible for people. And now they cannot get any visitors from the family. And on a day like Yom HaShoah, they will be reminiscing. They will be thinking about the past and about what happened to them. It's very, 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 very sad. I particularly regret this forced, subdued remembrance ceremony that we have now, that's only recorded. It's been pre-recorded, in fact, at Yad Vashem, which is the world's Holocaust Remembrance Center here in Jerusalem. And the ceremony has been pre-recorded even. So there were no survivors present for whom this was an important event, and no audience either. I also think that no doubt on this day, many families will mourn their loved ones who have succumbed to this year's enemy, another enemy we are fighting today. It's a very sad time and a very sad day, and I hope that Hashem will have mercy with us and soon stop this evil.
Amen to that. We certainly hope that this reality ends very, very soon. And certainly in God's hands. And I just want our listeners to note the fact that you actually survived the Holocaust because of a Kindertransport, correct? You made it to Great Britain as things were developing in Nazi Germany, correct?
Yes. Well, as things got worse, the Jewish organizations in Germany at that time contacted the Jewish communities in England and said, can you not save our children? And eventually an arrangement was made with the permission of the Nazis that 10,000 children, mainly Jewish, would be saved to England. I don't know if all 10,000 made it because the war intervened, maybe only 7.5, I estimate. I was one of those who made it, but I have a problem here because it was unaccompanied children, no parents. So you have to imagine the trauma of children when their parents, in my case, my mother, because I must say that my father had already been deported to Poland. We are Polish Jews, and he died in the Warsaw Ghetto. But my mother took me to the train, and I was old enough to understand why I was going. It was 5 minutes before war broke out. It was 4 weeks before the war. And then there were little children, 4-year-olds, who didn't understand why they were in the train and their parents were outside and they were crying and, Mommy, I love you. And the trauma was terrible. And that was only because the British did not allow parents to accompany the children. That was a real terrible thing. Anyway, I was saved to England with the Kindertransport. That was a collective name, I have to explain to you. Some children went to foster parents, others went to family, others still went to into hostels. And and many organizations had an input into this, and I came through Brit Chalutzim Datiim, through the religious Zionist youth movement, which had a Brit Hanoah youth organization. And that, I didn't know it at the time, but that subsequently became Bnei Akiva. And so I am the oldest Bnei Akiva boy, I think, in England as well. And so I lived, and I came into what was effectively a kibbutz. It was a communal center. There were several. A wonderful man, Aryeh Hendler, Zichron Livracha. He was not all that much older than I was. He organized all that. He had permission from the Nazis to travel back and forth, and he organized for Bachat, Brit Chalutzim Datiim, for us to come. And I lived in this communal center, rather like a kibbutz, so that at that time, if you had torn pants, you went to the machsan, to the stores, and showed them, and then you got another pair. And I survived that way until I left, and subsequently went into the British Army and fought and landed on the beaches of Normandy.
Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Well, the rest is history.
And we could probably, Walter, talk for hours getting your life story. And I do hope that it is documented in some format, because it truly is remarkable, your entire story from living under the rule of the Nazis to Great Britain, and then making Aliyah to Israel in 2004. But since our time is short, I must interrupt, which was the best thing the second best thing in my life I ever did after getting married. And to come to Israel, it was my dream, because, I have to say that I was registered to come to Israel, to make Aliyah to Israel, since about 1937, long before I actually came in the Kindertransport. But the British didn't give the permits. Right.
I was destined, and where I lived subsequently in England with my friends, my chaverim, they were the ones who started Kibbutz Lavi. And I could have been a founder of Kibbutz Lavi, but at that time I was married, and my wife, she wanted to stay in England. So what can you do if the wife didn't want to go? But I had several opportunities to go, and I can also tell you about Aliyah. We're coming far away from Yom HaShoah, but I can tell you that when I came out of the army in 1947, a shaliach, a representative from the army here, came to me and said, "You're an experienced soldier, come, we need you, we want you." That was 47. And because my wife didn't want to go, I didn't go. Otherwise, I would have been here also in the War of Liberation, which I regret to some extent.
Well, we're glad you're here now. We're glad you're in Israel. We're glad that you are broadcasting the truth about Israel to the world. Walter Bingham, what an amazing story. The oldest, I should say, a young 96 years old, broadcasting to the world. I want people to know how they can reach out to you, hear your broadcasts from Israel to the world, so that they can learn more. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I mean, like I said, we could talk for much, much longer and get more of your life story. But if people want to get in touch with you, listen to your programs, to learn more about your amazing, amazing adventures in life, how can people listen to you, Walter?
Well, Josh Hasten, thank you very much. It's been an honor to have been on your program too.
Thank you. What's the best way to get in touch with you or hear your shows?
Well, you can get to Israel National News /radio, Walter's World, or you can go to the Walter Bingham file on israelnewstalkradio.com. Or in fact, if you go to Google and you put in the word Walter Bingham, Israel, you have to put Israel behind it. First of all, you will hear all my life story. And secondly, that will lead you to all my different programs.
Well, I want to thank you so much on the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day, Walter. It's great to call you a friend and colleague here in the radio business. And let's all be safe now as we head through this Corona situation together here in Israel and around the world. Let's be safe and keep it up, Walter. Stay strong. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay healthy. And please, God, let's talk again soon.
Oh, did you one more thing I didn't tell you? You can put that in the middle of the program. Is that that the secular date today today's secular date for the eve of Yom HaShoah has a particularly sad significance because it is the birthday of the big Rasha, the big Nazi who started it all in Germany. I don't want to mention his name. It's his birthday today.
Wow. No, I didn't even know that. I appreciate that piece of information. Walter, all the best to you. Keep it up. We're going to take a short break and be right back. You're listening to Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. We'll take a short break and be back with all the news, all the latest here from Israel, especially in regard to the situation with Corona.
Zionism, political and secular, says Ben-Gurion, held that Israel must be redeemed by its own efforts and by natural agency, that the Jewish people on its own must create the foundations of a new life. Well, I'm definitely looking to found a new life for my people in the land, although I'm not so sure we can do it on our own. Because I'm Rav Mike Foyer, and this is The Jewish Story.
Join Rav Mike Foyer for the best Jewish history podcast, The Jewish Story, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here. Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com for the 20th of April, 2020, the 26th of Nisan, 5780. I want to thank Walter Bingham. He is an icon. He is an absolute treasure. It was great to have him on the show. Just go back. If you missed any part of that interview, go back and listen to the words of a survivor, somebody who fought in World War II as well, made his way to Israel, and is the oldest broadcaster in the world. That, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. And now I want to give you just an update on the news. Of course, Corona, the virus, top story around the world. The latest numbers out of the Ministry of Health this morning, we're talking 8 a.m. here on the 20th of April. 13,654 Israelis currently infected with the virus. We've had 173 deaths, unfortunately, as a result of the virus. Some positive news: 3,872 have healed from the virus, from Corona. The majority of people in light condition, over 9,000 in light condition, and then you have those who are in moderate and then in serious condition, and those who are on respirators. All of that information by the Israeli Ministry of Health. The government decided, as of yesterday morning, Sunday morning, a partial opening of the economy and of life here in Israel. And there was a whole list put out yesterday, and I'll just read a few of these lifting of restrictions. You're talking about partial openings of stores. Certain stores are now open. Special education up to 3 children. Joint child care. Prayer up to 19 people in an open space, even though my rabbi and many other rabbis are saying absolutely no minyanim, no quorums to pray, and I'm still holding by that. I personally am not going back to praying with a minyan until I can do it safely inside a synagogue. So I'm still praying at home. Weddings up to 10 people, circumcisions up to 10 people, sports activities up to 500 meters with 2 people, must be the same 2 people each time. And so here we have a lifting of the restrictions somewhat, and I just pray to God that this doesn't backfire. I understand the economy must open, And I just hope that people out there are wearing masks outdoors. That's a big one that you have to do. Stepping outside your house. I hope people are keeping to the orders and restrictions of the Ministry of Health. God forbid we should not see any more major increases in cases. They're talking about good news the other day, reported by the Jewish press. This was, I think, on Thursday or Friday. For the first time, more new recoveries than new sick here in Israel as a result of corona. I think it was this past Thursday. More people recovered, 343, than those who were taken ill, 264. So for whatever those statistics are worth, again, reported by the Jewish press, we're seeing some positive news, even with all the negativity, all the negative news here. So the positive news should, please God, continue. Ministers in the government were actually pretty upset with the prime minister. It was very odd Saturday night, I'll admit. You had the prime minister speak and talk about how all these restrictions would be lifted. And then after he spoke, just a few minutes later, the Ministry of Health put out an illustrative guide to the new lifting of restrictions. And then after all of that, the ministers met to decide whether or not they would approve of the prime minister's plan. So it was somewhat in reverse of the way it should have been. I mean, normally it would be the government of Israel approves of it, and then the prime minister announces it, and the health ministry puts out the actual orders or lifting of restrictions, the new directives. But this was completely strange. And then after a few minutes after people got upset that nothing had really been approved, the Ministry of Health deleted all of their information about the lifting of restrictions, only to put it up the next morning, Sunday morning, to let us know, in fact, it had been approved. So a lot of confusion there. Minister is upset. Environmental minister, protection minister, Elkin, reported by the J Post here, asking, why are we having a discussion where everything was already made public? How does the health ministry publicize things without a discussion in the cabinet? It's shameful. And some are calling the prime minister out as well for publishing those the lifting of restrictions without actually approving them in the cabinet. A lot of politics taking place here, of course. I mean, that's the way it is, unfortunately. But it was like chaos. I mean, you already had people running around outside. I saw out of my own window people outside taking advantage of the easing of restrictions even before it had been approved, because when you hear the Prime Minister of the State of Israel get on TV at 9 p.m. on Saturday night and make all of these announcements, people automatically assume, and I don't judge them for this, that is the new policy. So you had people already outside going 500 meters, doing everything which hadn't been approved yet. But then it was approved the next morning. Please God, it should go as planned, and hopefully we have what's the phrase now? Broken the curve or lessened the curve or did what we have to do. Hopefully we're going in the right directions. I mentioned before prayer quorums, and even though the health ministry says you can have up to 19 people at 2 meters apart praying outside, the Jewish press reports that Haredi ultra-Orthodox leaders are still against quorum, minyan prayers, even though the government has made these changes. According to Channel 12 News, the Jewish press says that correspondent Yair Asherki spoke to the Rosh Yeshiva, one of the biggest yeshivas there in Bnei Brak, who said that he recommended that people still pray at home. In addition, the highest-ranking Chabad community rabbi, Yitzchak Yehuda Yaroslavsky, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, said that he is against the relaxation of the rules. He thinks people should pray at home. I agree. Why take a chance at this juncture? I also was somebody who went to minyan each and every day for the most part. I hadn't missed the minyan on Shabbat in over 20 years. I think I've talked about it here on the show, Shabbat morning. But that being said, I'm not willing to take the chance of standing around with so many other people, even with the easing of restrictions, trying to keep it to pharmacy, supermarket, and the restrictions with the exercise 500 meters from the home. 3 million surgical masks donated by the Milner Foundation, if anyone is familiar, landed Thursday evening in Israel on an El Al Dreamliner brought in from China. Masks will be distributed to Magen David Adom emergency staff services, as well as Israel Railways, the post office, and other organizations. So thank you very much. I'm not familiar with this Milner Foundation, reported here by the Jewish Press, but thank you so much for that. In political news here in Israel, we still do not have a government. It's back and forth. Benny Gantz, the Speaker of the Knesset, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, back and forth. 1 minute there's progress, 1 minute there isn't progress. Last I heard, they broke off coalition talks just a few minutes ago, but by the time you're hearing this podcast, who knows, perhaps we'll have a government. So back and forth. But in regards to one of the main issues here as it relates to Judea and Samaria and my audience, political officials reported here by Arutz Sheva, Israel National News, officials made it clear Sunday that at the moment, as part of negotiations, which perhaps from what I just saw collapsed anyway, sovereignty will not be included among the government's basic principles, which I find definitely disturbing. I mean, we were talking about, before this whole corona thing hit, we were talking about applying sovereignty to Judea and Samaria, the Jordan Valley, and the northern Dead Sea area. That was the plan, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, based on the Trump deal of the century. We would start applying sovereignty to certain areas, but it looks like that principle, the issue of sovereignty, is not included, was not included in terms of one of the conditions to form a coalition. In other words, we'll form a coalition, if I'm speaking as if I am with Likud or the Prime Minister's side, but we'll form a coalition even without Benny Gantz agreeing to sovereignty. Perhaps it's the pressure of the European Union, which somehow has the time to get involved in Israeli politics, according to Times of Israel, warning Gantz not to agree to what they call West Bank annexation. We're talking about Judea and Samaria. The EU has been warning Benny Gantz not to agree to annexation of parts of Judea and Samaria, they call the West Bank, in coalition negotiations with Prime Minister Netanyahu, report said on Saturday night. Annexation of the Jordan Valley and Jewish communities was a core election promise, as I mentioned, by Netanyahu. Gantz has given mixed messages on such a move, which is generally opposed internationally, at least by some, but could be approved by Washington as part of the Israeli-Arab peace plan. So EU officials spoke over the last few weeks with Gantz's foreign affairs advisor, told her that the union strongly opposes any unilateral move to extend Israeli sovereignty over what they call the West Bank. I call Judea and Samaria. Sources, European diplomat sources said on Saturday night. So there you have it. The EU, with thousands, I should say, of people dying, still have the time to try to get involved in internal Israeli political matter, namely the application of sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, something which should have happened back in 1967, but has not happened until now. We'll see how things play out. And again, it is very fluid, if you will, a very, very fluid situation with coalition talks starting, stopping, who knows what. Will we have a fourth election? I don't know. It is very, very possible, but the European Union getting involved in Israeli politics at the same time, the Palestinian Authority continuing to incite to murder. Even with Corona going on, they still have the time to brainwash their children, the next generation, into wanting to become, in their vision, martyrs, essentially murdering Jews in Israel. Palestinian Media Watch reports that songs broadcast on official PA television during the Corona crisis encourage continued terror, promote martyrdom, death for children, and congratulate mothers on the dying of their son as, quote, martyrs. These songs have been exposed in the past, but now they're re-airing these songs on official PA television. And you have some disturbing quotes here. Palestine, I will redeem you with my child. Calling on Palestinian Authority families to encourage their children to become so-called martyrs, suicide bombers, murderers of Jews and Israelis. That's what's going on under the Palestinian Authority, even in the age of Corona. Go to Palestinian Media Watch, check out all of their information. And if you don't want to listen to the commentary, don't. Just check out the translations. Minimally, check out the translations of what the official Palestinian Authority, our so-called peace partners, what they're saying in Arabic to their own people when the world is not paying attention. But thanks to Palestinian Media Watch for translating all of this horrible, unfortunately, horrible incitement to violence against Israel and the Jewish people. We're going to end with some positive news here on the eve of Holocaust and Remembrance Day in Israel. The number of Jews worldwide nears the global Jewish population in 1925. Reported here on numerous sources. This one is from Times of Israel. Ahead of Holocaust Remembrance Day, which begins tonight, the Central Bureau of Statistics released data on the number of Jews worldwide. According to the CBS, there were 14.7 million Jews at the end of 2018, just short of the 14.18 million there were in 1925. 6.7 million Jews in Israel account for 45% of the world population. That is the biggest individual population number in terms of Jews living in one place. But if you add up the U.S. with a population of 5.7 million, and France, Canada, the UK, Argentina, Russia, Germany, and Australia, there's still more Jews living outside of the state of Israel, but those numbers are changing. More and more Jews are coming home to Israel, and hopefully one day very, very soon, Israel will be able to boast the fact that more Jews live in Israel than outside of Israel. Again, just to clarify, Israel does have the largest Jewish individual country, has the largest Jewish population, 6.7 million Jews in the world, but hopefully the numbers will change even more so that Israel will have the majority of Jews living in the world here in the state of Israel. That's going to do it for today. Everyone out there, most importantly, in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Shout out to Benjamin Bresky for all the work he does, and Tabitha Epstein behind the scenes to make this happen. Everyone else here at the Land of Israel Network, you can get in touch with me during the week. Josh at thelandofisrael.com on Facebook. Joshua Hasten on Twitter at Josh Hasten, on Instagram as well. And I said it before just a minute ago. I'll say it again. Be safe, everyone out there. Follow the rules. Stay at home. And please God, we will speak again next Monday as we will be getting ready for Memorial Day and Israel's Independence Day, celebrated like never before from home. That's the way we're going to do it. So be safe out there. Shalom, shalom from Israel and Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish state and the eternal capital of the Jewish people. Shalom, shalom.
As a people, who are we as a nation? What does it mean to be a Jew in the land of Israel, as a Jew in Judea? What is our message to the world? We're finally back in our land, and we get to ask these questions.
Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to make Judea and Samaria an issue for the entire world, to know that the Jews have a place in the world.
Israel Inspired with Aryeh Bromwoods and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.